Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by these great sponsors. Axon started out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. Imagine having 100 years of tire and wheel knowledge in your back pocket the next time you sell a piece of ag equipment. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransinc.com for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. This podcast is also brought to you by Ag Direct. No matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Markets with Shawn Hackett. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to axontire.com. Axon Tire would like to give all the loyal listeners of the Moving Iron Podcast a free Alliance baseball cap. So if you're interested in getting one of those, go to marketing at axontire.com and they will send you one in the mail. So just send your details to marketing at axontire.com and they will send one right over to you. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs at Valley Transportation. Our goal is to help you reach yours. And no matter how you buy your ag equipment, whether it's from a dealer, an auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com. Shawn Hackett is with Hackett Financial out of Boca Raton, Florida, and he's nice enough to come on a couple times a week to listen to me sniffle and sneeze. So, Shawn, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing well. I have a clear mind.
That's good. That's real good. All right, Shawn. So, stats and finance news came out yesterday. The Fed said they're going to raise it another half a point, just like they promised they would. The markets rallied towards the end of the day because they said they were going to raise it 0.75 of a point next time. So, I guess as you look at that, what's your feeling about that? How do you think that's going to affect what we see in the trade right today?
Well, the half a point was expected.
Sure.
Usually the market sells the rumor, buy the news. So short term, we had that kind of action yesterday. But overall, the supply shortages, there's sometimes prices go up because you've printed too much money.
Right.
And sometimes prices go up because we just actually don't have enough physical supply. We really have high prices mainly because we just don't have a lot of physical supply. And you can raise rates all you want. It's not really going to change that situation. It could drive some speculators out of the market. It can do some short-term things. But at the end of the day, what you need is some good weather, some better production, and you need to rebuild and in stocks. And until the market gets comfortable that that's going to happen, I don't really think at this, because of that's the nature of why prices are high in commodities. I just don't think that the Fed meetings are going to have much impact other than very, very, very short term in nature until we can get a better handle on the growing season in the Northern Hemisphere, which is just getting started in Europe and here, Russia and that sort of thing. So it makes a lot of fanfare. A lot of people talk about it. It does move markets short term, but at least for agriculture, don't see much of an impact, at least not right now.
As you take a look at what's going on, so one of the big things that we talked about last fall was sugar and how sugar was going to impact, was going to have a bit of a world supply uptick compared to what we've seen. Shawn, I guess as we go into sugar beet planting season and looking ahead as to what we see out there, how do you think sugar is going to be impacted throughout the rest of this year with what we see happening with the rest of the commodities?
Well, remember we talked about big Asian production last year, and that's been weighing down on the market all for the first half of the year, and prices have basically flattened down. But energy is really high. And, ethanol production is on the rise, and a lot of countries who don't have a lot of corn are thinking about using sugar to produce more ethanol. So, it's an energy ag commodity, and so, we would definitely think that the demand for ethanol based upon sugar is going to be improving. But at the end of the day, we definitely need to have some weather problems in Asia to get this market going. And so here we are in May. May tends to be when sugar likes to make a seasonal low, typically. And then it tends to have a rise in the summer on worries over Asian sugar production. And so I think we're at a point where we're probably, forming a low, and the market's going to be watching very closely any news about increased ethanol production in different countries, and on top of it, if there's any adverse weather in sugar growing areas, especially in India and Thailand, where they're major exporters. So, no silver bullet right now, no immediate catalyst other than the market that's probably looking at a seasonal low and looking for a reason to price higher based upon the energy component of sugar at this point.
We've talked about rice a little bit yesterday, but I read something last night that made me think about what you said in Tuesday's podcast. So Sri Lanka decided they were not going to fertilize their rice crop, and now they're having some incredible issues with, I guess let me rephrase that. They decided to ban chemicals in agriculture, right? And so now you have this big issue with the amount of rice that's being produced in the country. So you talked about it yesterday. I'd like for you to expand on it a little bit, but what's it look like, when the fertilizer situation is the way it is, and you start looking at countries that are heavy into rice, and like you said, rice takes a lot of fertilizer to get started. So I guess talk about that a little bit and what you see happening there.
Well, the key with rice is it's really a major crop grown in Asia. And, whereas corn is South America, North America, soybeans are, North America, South America. And to some extent, the United States can afford and can get access to fertilizer. And I would argue South America can as well. China, I believe, will make sure that they get access to fertilizer because they have a vested interest in it. But the problem with Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, big rice producers, exporters, they don't have the money. Even if they could find the fertilizer, they don't have the money to put that fertilizer down. They don't have it, and I don't even think so it's really a situation where you're looking at. I think the International Rice Research Foundation put out they did a study. I think they went into all these Asian countries and surveyed and asked them, what do you think realistically are your plans, about fertilizer and such. And the answer they came back with was that based upon what they were hearing, based upon the access and the affordability factor, they thought global rice production, let's put it this way, Asian rice production would be down 15% this coming season, not having to do with weather, just doing with less fertilizer usage. To put that into perspective, that loss of production would feed 1 billion people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if they're right about that assessment, and we lose 15% of Asian rice production at a time, by the way, that demand for rice is really high because of the high price of wheat and the price for rice for feed. The part there's rice that's not high quality enough for human consumption that they're feeding the animals to try to. You could be looking at a situation that would be really humanitarian. It would put the world in a huge humanitarian crisis. We're almost there, but we're not there because there's enough cheap rice for sale right now that keep places like Africa, and places like Asia from not having an economical source of food. So now, of course, if you were to have some adverse weather in India or adverse weather in Southeast Asia or adverse weather in China on top of the fertilizer situation, the things could be considerably worse than the 15% that IRR mentioned. So it's a really big deal, Casey. I mean, it's a really, really, really big deal. And that's why, we really are focused on this particular commodity to really watch very carefully, because it's in our view, it's the only thing left before having a full-blown humanitarian food crisis on our hands. And not that I'm wishing that upon anybody, but I'm not sure how we get away from it, Casey.
Right.
I don't see how, unless we had an absolute dramatic change in the fertilizer situation where, it lost half its value and Russia is willing to sell it to anybody who wants, unless we had a dramatic turnaround, a good portion of Asia is just not going to be able to put that fertilizer down. I was reading some comments from the Philippine ag ministry, and they were actually talking to some of the larger farmers and saying that, that they're just not going to be able to put anywhere near the fertilizer they want to put down. And it's just really I think it's a sleeping giant in agriculture right now. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about it because they don't want to, they're trying to avoid a panic. They don't want to tell everyone that we're in trouble, but I really feel geopolitically, we talk about geopolitics all the time.
Sure.
This will be the next big geopolitical event is rice supplies no longer being available. Even yesterday, there was rumors that India might halt wheat exports because they had this record heat for the last 30 days, just as the wheat crop was finishing out. And, they've been a large exporter of wheat, kind of bridging the gap, but there was rumors that they might halt that because they're going to try to keep it in-house. Well, India did that with rice back in 2008, where they said, we're going to keep the rice to ourselves. And they're the ones selling a ton of rice to the rest of the world right now. So things are really, and of course, the Indian ag ministry said, "Oh no, we're fine. We're going to keep it." But every time that a government denies a rumor, the rumor is likely true.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. All right, so I guess as you're looking at, because the last time something like this happened, you had the Arab Spring, right? You had that whole thing in Egypt, erupt, and all the stuff happened there, and a lot of that was over, food stores, and you had people were hungry and food riots and everything else. That's where that really stemmed from. And then, some other, bad actors just kind of threw gas on the fire to make it turn into what it is. But you're exactly right. So, I guess as you take a look at that outlook going through 22, like you've talked about, where we're headed into this, late planting season, and then this early frost, early winter thing kind of creeping in. I guess how does all this play together? It's almost like we're headed to a perfect storm here, Shawn.
It has been a perfect storm since COVID. It set off the perfect storm from shutting down to reopening to the logistical issues. Obviously, the weather volatility that we've been talking about a lot. The Russia invasion, everything that you could pile on to create shortages, we've gotten. And now the last shoe to drop is the lack of fertilizer application, which this would be the first growing season where we're going to start to experience what that looks like. Now, remember, some farmers in the world did buy some fertilizer a year ago, and there is some fertilizer that can be put down that, in some places, but that's typically in your more modern, wealthier ag economies like the U.S. or like South America, where, they have a tendency to pre-buy. They don't do that in Asia. They don't have the money to do that in Asia. They just kind of, all right, here we go. We need it, and we buy it. Here we go. Well, that's not going to cut it this year, So that's just it's interesting. You talk about unrest and all. I looked at Africa because Africa is always a place where starvation begins typically first, or problems with hunger and food. And I forget exactly how many countries are in Africa, but half the countries in Africa in the last 6 months have experienced some kind of a coup attempt to overthrow the governments because of a lack of food.
Yeah.
The inability to feed themselves. And remember, the last time we really got short of wheat and rice was 2007, 2008. The big difference, Casey, however, is that the dollar was very weak back then. If you remember, the dollar was extremely weak. All the other currencies were very strong, which means that even though the U.S. price was high like it is today, they weren't seeing it like they are today. Today, the dollar is extremely strong, and their currencies are dramatically. So, for an example, if you look at the price of corn in Brazilian reals, okay, the Brazilian real was worth 4 times more back in 2008 than it is today. So, when you look at a chart of corn, for example, in Brazilian reals, it's like 5 times higher than it was in 2008. Even though it's the same price here, that wasn't. So everyone in the world is experiencing dramatically higher prices than they experienced in 08. And 08 caused all kinds of unrest and problems and issues. So the problem is just that much worse because of the currency's upside down, from what it was back then. And that just adds insult to injury in making this food inflation, this unaffordability of food, and even just lack of access to food really compound the geopolitical and humanitarian unrest, the Arab Spring. We're going to be seeing a lot of this going on over the next 6 to 12 months. You can't do this to 4 or 5 billion people and expect they're just going to sit quietly by and starve to death without trying to do something about it.
Well, Shawn, good stuff as usual, man. This a lot of things walking together here to make the perfect storm here. So, Shawn, I guess if folks want to reach out to you, get more information about what it is you're doing at Hackett Financial, what's the best way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. Podcasts, sample reports, white papers, all kinds of things for everyone to take a good look at what we do and how we do it to see if we could be of value.
I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast and on the YouTube at Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. So check that all out there. Also go to MovingIronLLC.com to get all the information about the Moving Iron Summit coming up here in Nashville, Tennessee, September 6th, 7th, and 8th. Shawn will be there giving his report about what's going on in the world headed into 23. So, Shawn, appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Casey. I look forward to next week.
Right on, man. And so with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Shawn Hackett. Let's move some iron, folks. Out. Axon Tire is going to have more tips, tricks, and client advice throughout the year and in September at the Moving Iron Summit in Nashville. If you're looking to sign up for the event, please head over to MovingIronLLC.com. We hope to see you there. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransitinc.com for all of your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. And no matter how you buy ag equipment from a dealer, auction, or a private party, AgDirect can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century.